It was a mistake to pick a game design course just because I thought, oh, I want to do games, so I'm going to study games. Why the heck did I stop teaching, make this huge bet, waste all of my, my savings and all that on this? And now it's literally like, it's not paying off. He saw something in me at a time when most teachers would just give up. I'm like, well, challenge accepted. I'm gonna eat, sleep, and do ZBrush. And that was it.
Yeah.
It feels like I'm telling like this fantastical story. It's not, it's actually, it actually happened, okay? It didn't take like a few weeks or anything. I knew immediately.
Yeah.
That's it for me. I'm gonna dedicate my life to that.
Have you ever put everything on the line for a dream? Today's guest spent his last dollar on a digital sculpting class, and that one decision not only paid off, it completely changed his life. Welcome to the Mo Method, where we talk to creatives who have turned their passions into professions. Today's guest is Rodolfo Silva. He's the newest ZBrush trainer at Maxon, and he now travels the world teaching artists how to unlock the full power of ZBrush. His story is a powerful testament to obsession, resilience, and the unexpected turns a career can take. He battled burnout, wrestled with impostor syndrome, and rebuilt his career from scratch more than once. If you're an artist trying to break in or break out, stick around, because you're about to hear how pure passion can carve a path where there is no map.
Hi, my name is Rodolfo, and I'm a ZBrush trainer at Maxon and a 3D environment technical artist.
I think the last time I spoke to you on the phone, like not over text, was before you joined Maxon. It's
oh yeah,
it's been a while. How's it been for you?
Well, it feels like it was yesterday, to be fair. Right? Like literally, it feels like it was yesterday that I was still like studying my game art course and all of that, and just preparing my portfolio and all. It went by so fast. I mean, since COVID, it feels like time just warped.
Yeah, for
you
real.
know what I mean? And there's like months are now days, and a year is like a month. I always say like COVID was a very long month.
Yeah, right.
I mean? It felt like it was a month. So well, maybe we're kind of fortunate because our work can be done, remotely and all that. And for a lot of people, I feel like they don't feel the same way. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
Like, oh, it went by in a month. No, it didn't.
Like that was
it kind of sucked, Like
yeah.
But
how's it been at you from Maxon? Have you been enjoying it there?
Yeah, it's been awesome. I mean, I've been here for a little over a year, and before then I was a ZBrush live streamer. So it's kind of like I was in touch with the ZBrush team all along, but for a year, it really went by super fast. Like I still feel like I'm new. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm the new guy.
Yeah. How big is the team there?
So a Maxon HQ, I'm not sure. Like you mean like ZBrush or like
like
Maxon?
your team that you're working with.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Because as trainers, I don't usually like, to be fair, the term trainer when I'm talking in this kind of conversation. Like we're talking about at events or whatever, that's fine.
Yeah.
But because people think it's kind of like, oh, you're just training people and that's it. It is. That's the main responsibility. You're training studios. You're doing training content, which is tutorials, live streams, and all that. But at the same time, we do work closely with the development team, with events, with legal sometimes, with when something needs to get done or whatever and approved. It's like we marketing particularly. We do a lot of things when it comes to ZBrush. We're basically much more like evangelists than actual, like the word trainer is just so, pocketed into this single branch of tasks,
Yeah.
So development is a big thing, for example. Creating artwork is another big thing.
Yeah.
Doing tutorials and live streams and all of that, that's part of the training. So it's kind of like we are ZBrush in a sense. You know what I mean? Like every single person that works at the ZBrush team, but with particular emphasis on product development and training, are sort of like the face of ZBrush, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And Ian used to tell me this all the time before I joined, like, oh, it's gonna be crazy. It's gonna get it a little. You're gonna have to wait a little bit until you get used to it because you're sort of like the face of ZBrush. But I thought, he was just saying that, because you're, you're live and stuff, and you wear this hat and that's it, But it isn't actually. Like you're way more involved than people might think in the actual process of things, let's say.
So what's your like day-to-day like? What kind of things are you doing?
Well, that's basically, like, again, the main tasks are usually, creating tutorials, live streams, training companies, training studios, sometimes training individuals, depending on the individual, depending on the type of agreement and deal that they have with Maxon. So and a lot of networking and generating business, let's say. So it's like generating passion for the software is also a big thing. That's why I go to events just to demo, showcase stuff, and and answer any questions. So it's mostly like those are the core tasks, like training, creating art, and live streams, tutorials, and going to events, basically.
Nice. So how much are you traveling? Like, they have you like going all over the world?
Well, not all over the world, mostly in Europe. Because again, like in Europe, that's the thing. Like there's Ian in the United States, there's Daisuke in Japan, and there's me in Europe, and that's it. So the time zones are kind of like, it's kind of like we're trying to cover like the entire like world in terms of time zones, except someone that might live on an island in the Pacific or something that might not get that sort of. They might not get ZBrush Live. We have to look into that. That's not good. So, but yeah, other than that, it's traveling. I mean, around the world is out of necessity, unless, it's just sometimes someone might not get covered. Maybe they can't for some reason. They're at another event, or they have another thing, or they're sick, or whatever. And then you might get called,
Yeah.
But mostly it's Europe in this case. Like last year, again, I've been here for a year. It's not like I've been here since when Paul was started.
Right.
So. But in a year, I traveled around Europe mostly, like from the UK, European Union, like around in Germany, obviously, but then like Belgium, UK, and Portugal, potentially.
That's awesome.
Spain, I didn't last year, but there's possibly Spain. It's in the radar as well. There's Poland as well. There's some events in Poland. So
nice.
There's stuff going around all the time. It's just that year by year, it varies. Like sometimes this year we go to this event and we don't go to that event or whatever. Or we go to all of them. I don't know. That's not up to me. It's way above my pay grade. I just get called and I go.
The powers that be.
Yeah, exactly. So I just get called and off I go, to spread the joy of ZBrush like an evangelist. There you go.
So let's go like jump into your background a bit. So like, where'd you started? I know in environment art, that was kind of your thing. How'd you get into it in the first place? Like, how'd you kind of start?
That's a long story, man.
We got time.
Okay. Are you sure? Okay, so I didn't really start it off in environment art, to be fair. Like as a kid, I always grew up with video games around me since I barely knew how to speak, basically, because I had the luck. Most people don't have this, especially back in the day, like during my period. I mean, I'm from the 90s, like in the 90s and the 80s, it wasn't really that common to be like a gamer, let's say.
Right.
You just played video games sometimes as an adult, but it was really rare. And kids used to play video games and it was considered a thing for kids,
Right.
So having a dad that was actually, he was one of the first, IT/programmers at the time. There was no IT or programming separation at the time, like in the 80s. You were just a computer guy, he was into like, Visual Basic, stuff like that, and programming hardcore, like machine code and stuff like that, like he was an engineer in a sense. But he was an enthusiast in video games. Like he really appreciated the technology that went behind the video games, and not just the technology, which is interesting because my dad was also a writer, a poet, right? And he appreciated the art of video games, like the visual part, the music, all of that, in a time when that was really, you had to be super creative, even as a developer, to create that sort of artwork in such limited software. You know what I mean?
Right.
Hardware, I mean, like limited hardware, right?
Yeah.
So he had the let's say top of the line video games for his time. He was a Sega guy, so I grew up with Sega.
Nice.
You know.
Yeah.
And I remember playing games on MS-DOS and stuff like that. So as I grew up, eventually what happened was my dad would get me those magazines for, you know, with demo discs and stuff like that. That's how I played most of the PC games, but, you know, aside from the console. And what would happen is I would just install the demos like crazy. He would just give me the demo disc and I would just go like crazy into the office and start installing it. Yeah. And then he would read out the magazines to me, sometimes in English and then translated. Maybe that's when I started, you know, learning English as a young kid. This was like when I was 4 or something. So the previews, reviews, the tech, you know, everything, he would just read it to me because I enjoyed that. Yeah. So with time, obviously, I was the kid as a teenager, for example, I was the kid that when I got Halo 2, it was one of the first games with normal maps, for example, like that and Doom 3, right? I remember that one of the first things I was doing in co-op, you know, you could do campaign co-op with my cousin. I was playing co-op, and you would just get destroyed because I was just staring at a freaking texture, you know, for like minutes on end.
Yeah.
So it is, I was that sort of like kid, you know, like, which is, I would say, not normal, especially back then. There was no internet, or it wasn't as widespread as it is today, you know.
There's no YouTube.
Yeah, you couldn't just look up how they made Halo, and that was it, you know.
Yeah.
So I had to actually try to figure it out, and I remember spending hours and hours and hours, I mean tens of hours playing video games as a teenager and preteen and as a kid, and looking at the game and trying I really remember having these thoughts, like trying really to figure out how the heck did they make those things, like the trees from Sonic and you know, like the textures in the face. Like I knew the concept of like, okay, they have a 3D something, because my dad used to tell me about 3D and all of that. He actually had 3ds Max. It was 3D Studio at the time, right, in the 90s. And I knew there was some sort of like form, right? I couldn't explain it, but it was form. Yeah. And then they painted something that was flat and wrapped around that form. I had that notion.
You knew that from the magazines and stuff that you were...
Not just that, because I one of the demo discs also got mods, right? Sometimes like, that's how you get mods. You didn't have like Nexus mods or whatever.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
So I remember getting mods for like GTA 3 back in like 2001 for the PC. And most of those mods were like real cars, or I don't know, different clothing for Cloud, and you know, like actual branding, like Coca-Cola branding and stuff like that on GTA 3, and I would look up the files and see like the texture of the main character, like a flat version of his face, just half the face, because they had like 256 or 128 or something pixels, so they would just texture one side of the face and then mirror the rest, right? So there was just half the face, you know, the clothes, and I started to understand, okay, so this is sort of like this form that's in this computer game. And then that's painted in a 2D kind of like, I thought, paint or something, you know. That's what I had contact with. I didn't know Photoshop. Right. And then this goes into that character. Again, it was very rudimentary, but I was like 10.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. For a 10-year-old, it's not bad.
It's not bad, especially like, I don't know, in the 90s, again, you don't have YouTube. There wasn't digital tutors, you know what I mean? Like,
right.
So
you were just fascinated by it.
Yeah, I was just intrigued. And I remember particularly that the first time I had that thought of like, hey, I would love to have a job in this industry, or something similar, like, oh, I would love to have that guy's job. Because up until then, in the 90s, most people thought games were made by programmers in their spare time or whatever. You know what I mean?
Right.
Which most of them were, to be fair. You know, like, but they thought it wasn't really like, oh, there were no artists. They wouldn't even conceive like the fact that there was like an artist that worked at a video game or something. You know, it was just programmers. It was computer nerds that got together in someone's basement, and instead of playing video games, they decided to make Halo 2 or something. You know,
right.
So, which wasn't the case. Halo 2 was like the first game that surpassed, I think, blockbuster sales and movies, right, or something. It was like the first one. So by then, the industry was starting to grow a lot, but most people, at least in Portugal, still thought it was like this very, you know, obscure thing that nobody really knew how it worked, you know. So I thought the same because I was a kid, and you know, I wasn't surrounded by, freaking video game developers,
Right.
So I remember I had an Xbox. This was like the first Xbox, and I had the magazine for Xbox, which I bought with my allowance, basically. And there was a video. Like the DVDs would get demos, like some save files to try out some stuff in games, and then you'd get like videos, like trailers, you'd get behind the scenes and stuff. And this is the behind the scenes that actually got me. I remember that I put that disc on. There was a behind the scenes of making of Fable, the original Fable, right? And I saw that. It was like a 15-minute thing. It's a DVD. It's not like you can pack a lot.
Right.
And it's on YouTube now. I actually found it the other day, like half a year ago, but whatever. So I saw that, and I saw Peter Molyneux explaining what you could do in the game. Well, obviously, he overhyped a little bit, but I mean, I forgive him. It was an amazing game. And and then you see, like, when he was talking about the character could get fat, could get, like, muscled, could get slim, depending on how you eat and how you fight. I saw someone on a computer. They had, like, those CRT, like, sort of monitors, and on that computer, there was this 3D form of the character, and it was getting fat. The guy was just sliding a thing. It was a blend shape. Now I know it's a blend shape,
Right.
So, and he was just sliding a thing, and the guy, the character was getting fat, and then he was getting like the physique, all of that.
Yeah.
And I saw the software. It was Softimage, because now I rewatched it and I know. But at the time I just saw that and I was like, what the heck? That's a thing? There are people that just make the character or something? That's crazy. I want to have that job,
Yeah.
And that was like the first time I ever even thought, like the thought even crossed my mind of getting a job in the games industry. And I was like 12 or 13 or something.
Wow.
So
It's like a lifelong dream for you.
yeah, for sure.
Wow.
Like since I was born, basically.
Hey, just a quick pause here. I just wanted to take a moment to say a huge thank you to everyone who has subscribed to the channel so far. We just hit a big milestone of 100 subscribers, which I know doesn't sound like a lot, but it seriously means the world to me. I appreciate every single one of you. Making these videos and sharing these stories like Rodolfo's is something I genuinely love to do, and your support really helps keep this channel going. So if you're enjoying the conversation and want to help more artists find it, please hit that subscribe button. It's free, it helps the show grow, and it honestly means the world to me. All right, back to the show.
So yeah, like when you say you started off in an environment, here's the thing, fast forward, right, a few years ago, I had a very rough, like, teenage. I wasn't really the best student, let's say, and I didn't handle like my parents' divorce that well at the time. So I was very rebellious. You know what I mean? Like I would just skip school, and hang out with a bad crowd and all of that.
Yeah.
So what happened was I dropped out of school. The second year that I actually failed school, I failed because I just skipped class.
Right.
And but the second year I actually dropped out. I decided, okay, fuck this. I'm not gonna do anything. So why even attend? So I remember at the time there were these government-funded programs that would fund particular schools in certain. They call it professional courses, which is like courses made so you get into the job market. And it's the equivalent
of trade schools.
Yeah, it's like a trade school, but it's equivalent to the high school diploma. You'd get that, and you could go to university, but the point of the course was actually to get you in the market, and you'd get paid like for meals and stuff and transportation. I was like, I'm not doing anything. This was almost a year after I dropped out, and I was like, might as well just do that. And there were two courses actually: sound design and 2D and 3D animation at that school.
Oh, cool!
It's called IPTA. The school, it's in Porto, and later I taught there as a 3D Maya instructor.
Full circle.
Yeah. So basically, when I met Paul, I was teaching there. So I just got in, and I was about to get expelled because those courses get funding from the government. So the government is very strict. Each term, if you're there and you're not like really caring about anything, it's not about your grades. It's more like the teachers can feel like if you're there because you want to, or you're just wasting the government's money, you know? So they would expel students just because they weren't really into the course.
Not
or
serious.
yeah, exactly. Or in some cases, they might change you from one course to the other, you know? But this is back then. Now everyone just does the courses and nobody cares. They're just wasting government's money. They don't care. So tax money, who cares, right?
Right,
So,
exactly. Just raise the taxes. Why don't you?
yeah, just raise the taxes. Exactly. That's Portugal for you. But but yeah. So I went into this program, and I remember at the end of the first term, like the whole term was just regular classes like math, English, Portuguese. Regular, the normal classes. We still hadn't have anything that was very specific, very technical. We had geometry actually, like a technical drawing and stuff like for geometry, but that was it. And I was about to be expelled, and at the end of the term, the teacher that was supposed to introduce us Photoshop got sick. He was supposed to introduce us like it's a 25-hour module or something that we were supposed to take. He got sick, so the teacher that was going to introduce us to 3ds Max in the second term switched the class. So the last couple of weeks of the first term, I was introduced to 3ds Max. And I remember the exact day, till this day, I remember it clear as day. I remember how the weather was, where I was sitting in that class. Not kidding. And that teacher remembers it too, because he saw that. He saw something.
Like the light bulb.
Yeah, he saw something in me at a time when most teachers would just give up, So and we're still friends to this day.
Wow.
So he basically introduced us to 3ds Max. It was very basic, like just model a chair with cylinders and cubes and just moving around, to move the camera. But for me, it was the first class where I stayed after class in the classroom, to explore the software. I even looked at the documentation. I was like, Jesus, this is how they do it,
Yeah,
that's it. This is what I saw in that documentary all those years ago. You know what I mean? So at that moment, I was like, I decided internally. It didn't take like a few weeks or anything. I knew immediately that was what I wanted to study. If this was a thing that you could study, like, that's it. That's it for me. I'm going to dedicate my life to that.
Yeah.
So... and I think that teacher saw that too. So in the teachers' meetings, he actually convinced the dean to not expel me and wait another term. And in one term, all of my grades just skyrocketed.
Wow.
Like all of them, because all of a sudden I didn't care about anything else. All I did was like 3D and study. I was just studying math. I was studying anything. Like everything was just exciting for me. You know what I mean? So... because I still had no idea what I needed to learn. You know what I mean? Like, digital tutors was a thing at the time. There was some YouTube videos, but not a lot. This was like 2009, 2008. YouTube wasn't really the resource it is today. You had Gnomon Workshop, and you had Eat3D as well, and digital tutors. Those were the most reliable. Sometimes some mentorships on like CG Society. But those were like the most reliable. It was Linda. You had Linda at the time, but it was different. It was just a different time, So you had effects PhD if you were into effects as well. I remember I had a classmate that was really, really into Maya, like effects and stuff. So and Nuke and FX PhD was a big thing. So all of those platforms was just starting to get like a hold, with the exception of the Gnomon Workshop. But I mean online, right? Gnomon Workshop or DVDs, right? So after that, I went to college after the course, and I was like, this is what I want to study. And I think that was, it wasn't a mistake, because it's never a mistake. You learn a lot of other stuff, right? But it was a mistake to pick a game design course just because I thought, I want to do games, so I'm going to study games. At the time, there was only like 2 or 3 courses in the whole country. And they were university courses. So game design at the time.
So what was the degree you were going for?
It was game design, because there were like 2 courses, and one of them was game programming, and the other was game design. And I was like, might as well study game design, because I also like game design as a hobbyist, not a. I'm not a game designer. Okay, just keep that in mind. But I have a friend who is. But so I decided to go there because it had some subjects in 3D. Right? And looking back now, that course particularly was a mistake. Maybe not going to university as a whole. It made me take the long way around. basically. So instead of going like, okay, directly into something like Gnomon or something, number one, I had no money for that at all. Like I was broke, like, so I remember that the course was so bad, and it was mostly because the teachers there, they were academics. They weren't like, it's not like they worked in the industry ever.
Right.
Or it's not like they actually did something with the software. Even as academics, they were more interested in researching about the software than actually using it. You know what I mean? Yeah. So there were a couple of teachers that were cool. I mean, I had a drawing teacher that practically traumatized me against drawing, and traumatized everyone else. So, and then I decided after a year, I just had a burnout and to switch to an art school, like an actual proper art school.
So like looking back, you said you did the long way around. Like looking back, what would you have done differently instead of going to college?
I wouldn't change a thing at all. Like the fact that I shot, basically the fact that I missed my shot. Let's say I missed by a long mile in that first course I picked. That led me to go to art school. If I had just thought, okay, maybe I'll just watch tutorials for like the next 3 years, maybe I wouldn't be here. Maybe I wouldn't even, maybe I wouldn't learn how to draw like I do, right? Like maybe I would never have studied like art history like I did. Like I'm obsessed with art history, by the way. So I remember that that school was very far away, so I had to actually rent an apartment and pay rent and whatever. I actually rented a room, shared apartment with a couple of other students, and I had to pay stuff, right? So the bills, it was not like it was free, plus the tuition. Nothing like in the U.S. though, at all. It was public university, it was very cheap, but for someone who has literally no income, and it's not like my parents were rich, that was still a lot of money. Yeah. So the amount of money that I was paying for everything else, utilities, basically would be the same as going to an actual proper art school in Porto. So I moved back to Porto. And this was right around the time the first THU happened. Do you know THU? Like the event? So it's an event in Portugal that started in 2013. And it gathers a lot of like the industry giants, industry professionals. That's how I met Alex Alvarez, for example. That's how I met Louis Tucci. That's how I met, I don't know, Christian Alsman, Ian Spriggs. A lot of my friends from the industry in Europe I met there. Like I met one of my greatest friends is currently at Ubisoft, is an art technician. They call it art technician. He's a technical artist, basically. And his name is Chu, and we've been friends ever since. I mean, it's been over 10 years, and we still talk, like, maybe not every day. I have my close friends that I play games of Fortnite, obviously. And then so that's a separate issue. But I mean, I talk to them every other week or something. We text.
What's the focus of this show?
So it is not a conference. It's very hard to explain, by the way. It's the event that even the speakers have a hard time explaining. Even the sponsors have a hard time explaining. So it is very much a art gathering more than anything else. So you have talks, you have mentorships, you have workshops, you have the gallery room with live model drawing, like in painting and sculpting. And you have art battles, you have karaoke, you have Tekken 8 tournaments, you have all of this stuff happening at the same time. But it's more like, imagine like Burning Man meeting TED Talks and meeting Gnomon Workshop or something. You know what I mean? Yeah. Combine all of that together and you get THU. That's sort of it. And every year is very different. Like every year there's all like stuff that is new that he tries to, like Andre tries to push, and it's always like unbelievable. There are obviously things that don't work as he wanted, but I think overall it's like one of my favorite festivals ever. And
so like what would you say like the purpose of going is for an artist?
So it could be multiple. You have recruitment sessions as well, so you might want to get like noticed by recruiters. So most people that go for the first time either go because of the recruitment sessions or because of the talks. But they're missing the point. Once they get there, what ends up happening is you don't sleep for like 7 days straight, because the event is like 7-8 days, right? It's not like 2 days and that's it.
Yeah.
It's a whole week. And because that's the best type of networking that you can do. Like you can't do networking in 2 days. It's impossible.
Right.
Like true networking happens all year long. It needs to happen all year long, right?
Right.
So basically you meet friends, and that's how you network. It's your friends. Your network is your friends, basically, right?
Right.
So some people go for networking, but most of the people is for the talks or workshops or recruitment sessions mostly. And when they get there, they realize that you don't sleep and you don't feel sleepy throughout the event. You just crash after the event. That's what happens to everyone. Like the last day is like what we call the THU blues, which is basically everyone's sad that they're leaving. They're all going to different corners of the world. Yeah. And then but it's also the exhaustion combined with that, because it's like 8 days nonstop, getting up at like 7 a.m., going to sleep at like 4 a.m. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it is hardcore. Some people don't do that, but it's...
if you want the real experience, though.
Yeah, like Andre pushes that you go to every single happening, you know? So it is cool. And I remember it was the first one, so it was small. It was like 150 people or something, attendees, I mean. But, I mean, the names that were there were Andrew Schmidt from Pixar, from Disney at the time. There was Afonso Salcedo from Pixar at the time. There were, I mean, Scott Ross was there, like the founder of Digital Domain. He was like the main speaker, basically, that year. And a lot of other people, like, you know, I met people from, you know, at the time, Activision, Infinity Ward, right? So... and Joy, which is still, I mean, she attended a couple of years ago. So, and you know, she still remembered me. So that's cool. Yeah, you know what I mean? It's like I was just a kid. I was in college, you know, first year, and seeing all those people, like Justin Fields as well, was there like the first year, and seeing all those people, they're like freaking gods, right? It's like you're staring.
You can't believe you're in their presence.
Yeah, it's like I'm in Portugal, which is like this country that has like zero industry. There's like 2 studios that overwork their staff and underpay their staff. And when I say this, I know there's a lot of viewers that are going to be like, "Oh, I'm underworked." No, you have no idea. I'm talking like freaking 700 euros a month, right? Net. And to do like 3D artwork, which is not really flipping burgers, you know, like it's a specialized profession which should get paid properly. So that was the state in Portugal, and I think Andre wanted something to change there. They wanted the industry to take notice that there was a lot of talent in Portugal, which there still is, and that the talent was wasted in bad companies or bad culture, like work culture in Portugal. They wanted to change something, right? Education as well. So, and I think he's doing a good job. He's changing a lot in Portugal and throughout the world, to be fair. Like he has stuff going on in Japan and stuff like this year, right? So I remember this coincided with me coming back to Porto and going to art school. So, and I found the Porto Atelier, which is like a school for drawing, fine art. But it wasn't like any other fine art school. You know, it's not like you go in to talk about like abstract art and, you know, philosophical concept of a freaking stain on a wall. You know what I mean? It was actual classical drawing with a live model based on the system from the Grand Central Atelier, actually, which is in New York. Because the master there, Daniel Gamelas, was actually a student at GCA, at Grand Central. So he was teaching the same methods. We did the bar copies, we did the cast drawing. And I remember by accident landing there, because I hated drawing at this point. I was like traumatized, you know? Yeah. But a friend of mine, who was the guy that convinced me to go to THU with him, convinced me to just go and watch. And I was like, oh, okay. And then he knew that he was just going to give me a sheet of paper and forced me to draw, basically. You know what I mean? So that happened, and then I was so like anxious and scared. But then at the end of the class, I looked at my drawing, and I was like, I can't believe I did this. It looks awesome by my standards at the time, right? Because it was teachable. It was the first time anyone taught me there's a step-by-step to the process. Like you do this and you do that, and you'll get a successful drawing, regardless. The point is you practice that over and over and over until they become instinct, basically. Right? Like a martial art, right?
Right.
And so I got obsessed with drawing and fine art and oil painting and art history. So throughout my years in the art school that I switched, I was drawing like 40 hours a week, easy. Like from the live model or from casts or from life architecture, whatever it is. I was just drawing, painting, or sculpting all the time for like 40 years. Plus doing all the studying for the other classes, and we had like theoretical classes where you had exams and stuff. So all of that happening at the same time led me eventually to a small little burnout at around 2016. This was right around the time my dad got sick, right? So my dad got really sick, and all of that combined got me to a very dark place. And I think it's important that I mentioned that. I know a lot of people avoid trying to talk about this and these kinds of podcasts. I don't care. And I think it's important because it's something that a lot of people are feeling, especially nowadays in the industry. Yeah. They're going through a rough patch, with the layoffs and issues with the COVID thing. The world is kind of crazy. So people are kind of like, very, very isolated from each other and very polarized. And that leads to, depression and burnout and anxiety and all of that. And I'm no stranger to that, right? So I just want to be completely transparent in that because I think it's important. There might be people who relate and maybe it will help them somehow. Yeah. So I went through this burnout 2015, 2016. And I decided to split my last year of my course in two, basically. So the actual last year, which was 2017, I was just doing the final project for my degree, right? And during that first year, I was just drawing. Most of the classes were drawing, painting, and then I was just walking in the park, trying to feel the air and touch grass, literally. Yeah. Literally touching grass, that was a thing that they told me to do to combat depression, to touch nature itself. Yeah. And it sounds weird. Sounds super weird, actually.
Well, there's a whole thing. What do they call it? Grounding? Is that the way where people like? Yeah.
That's stuff. And I tried, and at the time, I remember I cringed a lot when I tried it for the first time. I was like, "What the heck am I doing?" People think I'm crazy or whatever. But then after a while, you're like, "Okay, this kind of like it's like you connected with nature." And there was nice parks in Porto, like old, like 19th century, beautiful parks, and so walking around and just having, a connection with nature, and then writing and drawing all the time. To me, that was like my artistic rehabilitation, to reconnect with the fun of it, right? And I think that's the key to getting out of burnouts, right? Reconnecting with the fun. It's not about the money. It's not about the career or the job or whatever. It's about the fun, right? If you're having fun, mission successful. If you're not, then you have to reconnect with the fun. And I still remember a talk from Ian McCaig at THU where he talked about that, the 3 stages of art, like fun, and then it's skill, and then it's money, right? And then once it gets to money and you burn out, then you have to sort of restart the machine, the cycle. Right? Yeah. You have to go back to being fun. Reboot. Otherwise you won't improve because you can't have skill without fun, and then you can't have money without skill, right? So it's sort of like that. But around this time, then I finished my course, right? And I started doing freelancing. And this was actually the first time I had read about ZBrush, right? Because I read 3D World and 3D Artist, like the magazines were like my favorite, my resource at a time where YouTube wasn't a resource per se. There were a few videos, but not a lot. So I was just reading the magazines all the time. So I knew what ZBrush was, and I saw the artwork, and I saw ZBrush Central being mentioned multiple times. I saw the names of the artists, so I knew some of those names even before THU. That's why when I saw the roster, I was like, "Oh wait, I remember these people." Yeah. And I remember that I started doing a lot of like very basic. I mean, like Dynamesh and clay, and that was it. Reconstruction of like ancient statues and 3D scanning that was like treated in other software and then brought into ZBrush to reconstruct. And there wasn't even a thing that they didn't even know that you could treat scan data in ZBrush. It was like that basic, And this was actually 2017, 2016. No, it was way after Dynamesh was introduced, but it was a thing, right? Yeah. So I remember that I did that, and I did some industrial. I worked for a manufacturing company, like with a foundry, like manufactured train pieces and for carts and whatever it is.
That's and
cool. It was, but it wasn't really artistic. You're just interpreting you're interpreting technical drawings, like very, very technical and doing a lot of math and
very precise.
Yeah, super precise. And you're working with CAD most of the time, which is, the Creo PTC, which is kind of like the equivalent of Rhino, I think. So, and around that time, I went to visit my former teachers at IPTA, right? And just to show them some drawings, because I was still drawing like a maniac, by the way. Like every day, I would draw at least 3-4 hours a day, like nonstop. Like,
do you still draw now?
Well, less since I got into Germany. I came to Germany because for some reason there is a school here, but the schedule is just off. Because here's the thing: the school in Portugal was very free, let's say. Like the evening classes, it was his own studio. You know, he's a sculptor and he uses ZBrush, right? But at the time he didn't. Now he uses ZBrush, but he was a traditional sculptor. He does like bronze sculptures and stuff like that, and like figurative art, and he was his own studio. And then he taught some classes in the evening. That was it. And then it grew to a point when he was teaching a class every evening, and then we started having like free portraiture drawing sessions and live models where we would pitch in and just pay off the model, all of us together, you know, and just draw without instruction. So literally there was something happening every day at that studio, and I was a part of it. And I'm talking like even New Year's Day, man, people were there drawing. Even Christmas, people were there drawing. You know, like people didn't really care. There was no holidays, man. He was there. If he was there, the studio was open.
Right.
Let's just draw. You know what I mean? So I even slept at this studio once. You know what I mean? Like that was the level of dedication. So I was sort of where was I? I was basically drawing still, and I went to visit that school to show them some drawings. And I remember the director was now my former art history teacher. And he loved me, by the way, because I was just so passionate about art history, even when I was taking that, you know, that trade school course. He literally came by me, and this was like the 2 sentences he told me. He was like, "Hey, how are you doing? Did you finish your degree?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I did like a year ago." And he was like, "Do you want a job?"
Wow.
That was like the second sentence. And I'm like, "Wait, I don't know, buy me dinner first. Like, take it easy, man." Like, you know what I mean? So I said yes, because they were actually struggling to find a 3D teacher, and they wanted me to teach Maya. And I was like, I haven't touched Maya in like 4 years. You know what I mean? Because I dedicated my soul to drawing. And so I decided to take the job, and it started with a couple of classes, then it grew into like being a freaking full-time instructor at like 5 schools, drawing and 3D, like 2 of those, like separate practices, let's say. And I remember that I was learning a lot, because I didn't want to be the teacher that I had in that first course that I joined in university. I didn't want to be those guys, you know what I mean? So I was taking courses like left and right, like Udemy courses, like you name it, just going and doing projects, like very small little projects. You know, mostly Maya, Substance, and Unreal. You know, I was still into Unreal because I did an internship after that trade school course at Big Moon, which is now Sabre, part of Sabre Interactive Porto. So I remember that I was teaching, and then COVID hit. My students all love me. I think not all of them. Obviously, there's some that are like, teacher, dude, but whatever. There's always one, you know.
Right.
So especially in like public schools and whatever.
Right.
But I remember when COVID hit, I was teaching online. That was even harder. Most students that really didn't want to do 3D, but they were forced to take that class, were kind of like whatever. Yeah. And that was really. I was like, I would love to just teach this to people who are interested. That's obviously a very difficult goal, because, I mean, unless you're teaching no one, you know what I mean? Or escape studios or something like that, then it's like, if you're not teaching at a specialized 3D school, that's impossible, right? So when COVID hit, I was like, okay, I want to up my game. I'm going to go back into ZBrush, because I was intimidated by ZBrush at the time. I knew how to do very basic things like subdivisions, you know. Zero measure was kind of like, I didn't really really understand it, but I didn't really understand anything until I met Paul, basically. So I remember that I was at home teaching the classes, not all of them. Some of them were impossible, like the drawing classes. They had no infrastructure for me to teach that. So I was just teaching like 2 or 3 schools, like the 3D part. And I decided, because no one went online at the time, like the full-time program, right? And I was like, okay, this might be my shot. I've been saving money, so I'm going to probably pour my resources here and take a class, like a subject. Not the whole year or whatever. Just a single subject, just like an individual. Course. Yeah. And since, I mean, I'm not American, so, you know, I don't have like $13,000 every 3 months to spend. I had to pick the class, right?
Right.
So I actually asked them. I asked Rosemary, which was the registrar at the time at Noman. Hey, I have this experience in ZBrush, and I showed him a couple of things, which are like horrible. I know how to do Dynamish. I know how to do this. I know how to do that. That's literally it. What class do you suggest that I take? And she was like, oh, it's all up to you. If you're just taking a single class, you're going to get out of the class what you give, basically.
Right.
And I'm like, well, challenge accepted. I'm just going to not sleep at all for like 10, 11 weeks. And so I joined Advanced Digital Sculpting, which was the most advanced class.
Oh, wow.
It still is.
Let's just jump full in.
Yeah. I was like, I don't care. If it's too complex.
This is your one shot, you know.
Exactly. I'll just do my absolute best. I'm going to sweat bullets. I'm not going to, I'm going to eat, sleep, go to the toilet, and do ZBrush. And that was it.
Yeah.
I literally did that. That was me.
Wow.
And when I had to teach a class, I would teach the class. But I had the content prepared. But it was like 2 classes a week that I had to teach or something at that point. So I was like, perfect. It's like I'm going to spend the whole week just studying ZBrush. This is ZBrush. I ate ZBrush basically at a point. I even forgot about my birthday, just so you know. Like, and it was Paul. You
made a birthday cake in ZBrush.
Yeah, no, I'm not even joking. It was Paul, right? Like, this was Paul's class. And in my time zone, it was 3 a.m. So the class started at 3 a.m. in Portugal. And it ended at like 6. Sometimes I would only go to bed at like 8, 9 a.m. Because I was just excited, a lot of ideas. I was taking notes while he was explaining stuff and trying. And then I wanted to keep trying the features that he was showing. It was a hard surface class. So I was doing hard surface in ZBrush. And I remember doing that. And then after that course, at the end, right, the deadline was like the 26th, 25th or something of June. It was around that time because my birthday is like really close to that. And I was rendering the shots for Paul. And I remember my mom coming to my room and saying, hey, are you not going to go? And I'm like, where? And she's like, everyone's waiting for you at the restaurant. It's like, you scheduled like your birthday party. What do you mean? And I'm like, oh wow, I completely forgot about that. So I was like stinky. I hadn't showered because of the freaking render, you know. So I had to go shower, you know, like and dress up and all of that. Like, and leave I was doing this on a laptop, so I was just leaving the laptop.
You're lucky there wasn't a ZBrush for iPad then. You might have brought it along.
Oh no, that would have been horrible. Like my family would kill me. Yeah, but yeah, so that was the first one, and then I decided I can't really stop now. I was like hooked to ZBrush, and I took like Michael's class, like Michael Pavlovich at CGMA, and some substance classes at CGMA. And when I was taking those classes, I was like, this could be a thing because everything is online at the moment.
Right,
this could be my shot. At this point, I have been attending THU for years. And
this is what, like 2020, 2021?
Yeah, 2021, 2022, around that time, right? COVID was starting to give the first signs of waning off, like the travel restrictions and all of that.
Okay.
It's like the beginning of like the, you know, lifting restrictions and all that, especially in Europe, right? So at this point, I was like, this could be a thing. And I was attending THU for years, right, at this point. They stopped for a year. They skipped a year because of COVID, right? And I remember this was even before Paul's class. I had a dream about THU and ZBrush for some reason. And I was like, okay, I woke up like super excited. I was like, wow, this dream was amazing. Like I remember, I was there with my friends from THU because I stopped going for a couple of years when I had the burnout. And so I missed my friends, right? And I was like, okay, if they do a THU this year, I'm going to buy the ticket immediately. And then I'm going to take as many courses as I can so I don't look like a fool. And then I'm going to apply to everything, like recruitment sessions, mentorships, whatever. Because back in the day, I didn't apply to anything. I was just there to socialize.
Yeah.
Most people are too intimidated to go sit down with like, I don't know, freaking the Sparth or something, or Playground or, like Blizzard. They're too intimidated. It's like their first time. And then if you're a student in particular, it's like, what am I going to show them?
The impostor syndrome and all that.
Yeah, but allied to the fact that you are still a student.
You are a beginner,
and you're in fact a beginner.
Yeah.
So I was, at this point, I was like, I don't care if they reject me. I don't care. It's like, at least I tried. You know what I mean? It's not like it's going to change anything. I'm going to stay the same. It won't worsen my situation at all.
Right. It could only improve.
It could only improve or stay the same. Right? So I applied to everything, and that's when I applied to Paul's class. So at that time, I saw that Escape Studios was also doing their course online, master's degree as well. And I was like, because I had thought about continuing doing master's degree, and I was like, oh, maybe I'll teach to, actual university, like degrees and stuff, to make a little bit more money. But then I was like, if I'm just taking a master's degree for the sake of it, I'm not going to be any better than the teachers I was so vocal against when I was a teacher, right?
Right.
I was vocal against those people, and they hated me for it. I don't care. So I was like, okay, I'm going to take if I'm to take a master's, I'm going to do it at one badass school that I know that I will not just get the sheet of paper. I'm going to actually get a portfolio at the end, right? And that's when I enrolled at Escape Studios online because it was cheaper. Again, it's not London. And I got the scholarship as well. If I didn't get the scholarship, I wouldn't be able to do it, right?
Yeah.
So I applied with the work I had done at Nomon and CGMA, right? And I got, and drawings as well. And so I got the scholarship. And that's when I landed in environment art. So I told you it was a long story. I told you. So I landed in environment art because I had to pick between character and creature sculpting and modeling. Creation, actually, because it's not just sculpting. Yeah. And it was a master's as well that they have. I think they still do. They have more now. They have technical art and whatever. And they had another one that was game art. Game art was mostly focused in Unreal, which to me, as an Unreal geek since Unreal Engine 3, UDK, was like perfect. If I own Unreal Engine, become a master in Unreal Engine and ZBrush are like the future to me. That's what I thought at the time, and I still think, by the way. ZBrush is like, if you're a ZBrush artist, this is something I say all the time. People go crazy about AI, and I'm not saying that AI is not bad or good or whatever. I'm not saying any of that. But what I'm saying is that if you're a ZBrush sculptor, there will always be a job for a sculptor.
Right.
There are things that AI will never touch. They can't. You can't train surgeons with AI.
Right.
Do you want to take the risk of cutting someone's artery or something because the AI messed up or whatever? You know what I mean? You have to train surgeons diligently for years to do that. Right. So, and ZBrush is used to train surgeons. So, it requires an artist to know the anatomy and stuff. So, ZBrush, in the sense of being the most purely, this is what I thought, the most purely artistic tool in the digital world, and Unreal in my mind as being the most purely technically advanced tool in the digital world, right? And more technically minded and artistic minded, because I always struggle with that. I'm very artistic, but at the same time, I'm very technical. I mean, I love UVs, man. So you can basically, it's either I am a technically minded person or I'm crazy because I like UVs. But yeah, so at this point, when I was studying at Escape, that's when I went all in. Literally for a whole year with no time off, with the exception of like Christmas holiday, which was like a week. That was it. And everything else was like no holidays at all. There were sometimes there was like a bank holiday, but they were like, our teacher was like, if you're, especially if you don't care about the holiday, you should be working on a project anyway.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, if it's not a religious thing for you,
right?
You know,
there's no reason you can't be still doing your design and your sculpting.
And some of those bank holidays were not holidays in Portugal. So I was like, to me, it's just a work day.
Right.
Even though I was full time doing that, I wasn't teaching at this point. I quit. I quit everything basically to even drawing to do that course. So for a whole year, I literally worked 16, 12 hours a day for nonstop. And obviously, you're going to say, right, this has consequences.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was very fruitful because it was the year that I learned the most about everything when it comes to video games, right? The technical aspect of making video games as a whole, which is what I wanted from the course.
Yeah.
Character creation was very nice, but it was just a character.
Right.
There's, like, you can have a game without a character, right? You can't have a game without an environment. It needs an environment. Even Tetris has an environment.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So,
It has to exist within a space.
Exactly. So the environment is the video game in itself, right? Like how it interacts with the player, how it reacts to the player. That's the game, right? So to me, understanding the artistic part of the game environment, in essence, was understanding how video game art was made in its completeness, let's say.
Yeah.
So I was very, very excited. I mean, my whole day was just, playing documentaries about freaking studios that I loved and or listening to music and just nailing it. It was like Maya and Unreal and ZBrush and Substance and everything just at the same time on that freaking cockpit that I had at home. Was always like burning. I didn't need heating in my house, I can tell you that. It was like always like on fire. My laptop, my poor laptop, just melted everything, So, and that's how I ended up in environment art. So, yeah.
Wow.
So, are we still on? Just like
most of the time, I think.
It's been 1 hour since I started. So,
That's really cool. That's quite the journey. So you're doing environment art for how long before you went to Maxon?
I was doing environment. So I finished the course, right? And I had at this point, when we were doing the final project, which was my open world environment that I made in Unreal, I was in touch with a few companies from THU and not just from THU. I did recruitment sessions at THU that year because I attended. I was in the process with a ton of like AAA studios that wanted me there. Studios in Germany, studios in Poland, studios in even in the US and UK, mostly in the UK, obviously because they know Escape Studios, right? It's from the UK. So it has a bit of a reputation there. It has a reputation worldwide, but in the UK they're like huge, right? So and I was doing that, and even third-party studios that would just pay for my equipment, and I would work from Portugal or whatever in titles like Call of Duty and whatever. And for a time I was like considering that, but I really wanted to get the in-person experience, like it's different than being there and meeting people. And I was a little bit tired at this point of, just staying at home and in that, compartment that I had over there.
Right.
So I wanted a little bit of a change at this point. But what happened was it was right around the time when the video game industry started going a little iffy, let's say. The layoffs hadn't started, like not mass layoffs like you're seeing recently. Yeah. But they were about to start. And you could tell
the foundation was kind of getting shaky.
Yeah, you could tell, right? So when I started the course at Escape, everyone was hiring everyone. Because it was during COVID, right?
Right. Everyone was playing video games.
Exactly. So they were over-investing, like investing in this bubble, basically, that was about to burst.
Yeah.
And what part of that investment is manpower, right? Because it's an investment of the company, which means that if you get a person hired and you have this project that you're working on, you're pouring money into that, you're not going to pay taxes on that money. Right, because you're not really taking it home. You're just investing on a company. You're growing the company. Yeah, they grew too much and too big and too fast, right? During the COVID period, and now that the restrictions were waning off and people were going back to work and in person and all of that, the industry started retracting a little bit, and that's when a lot of these studios just started dropping the applications, like my applications. At the time, I didn't see it like this. Obviously, I was like, doom and gloom,
Yeah.
And for that, like the fact that I'm even here, I have to thank Paul. Like he was the one that I told. There was a point, literally, because everyone had dropped me, basically, from studios that I was in the process, because friends of mine were like in lead positions, and they were like, "Oh, I know this guy. We should get in touch with him." So I got a recruiter get in touch with me, going like, "Oh, someone referred you from department." Didn't mention the name, but I knew, right? And you should do a call with me, like let's talk, right?
Yeah.
A lot of the connections were either that or recruitment sessions from THU, like the consequence of that. And there was that year at THU was crazy, like the amount of studios that were there. There was like Ubisoft, CD Projekt Red, Playground Games, Cloud Imperium, Frontier Developments. I mean, the guys, I still love them to death. I mean, I still talk to them, most of those people. Again, I don't blame the people. It's like, it is what it is, you know what I mean?
Right.
But at the time, again, you're too close to the issue that you get emotional about
emotionally invested.
Yeah, you get emotional about a lot of things, like, and then you tend to take it personally. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the fact that I was about to give up, like literally, I was like, why the heck did I stop teaching and throw myself head on, like make this huge bet on and just waste all of my, my savings and all that on this. And now it's literally like, it's not paying off, right? I'm not going to get a job. I'm not going to do this. And it felt like my dream is being shattered. Sort of what I imagine people are feeling now when they're laid off, right? It's like their dream job and whatever, and now they're out the door, and it's horrible, right? I imagine that would be the feeling, sort of. But now you have like a mortgage or something.
Right.
Add a mortgage to that, and had kids, and add all of that, and it's even worse than what I was feeling, right?
Yeah.
So I think then my last resort, I don't know what, call it God, call it the universe, call it whatever. I think something spoke to me that I should tell it to someone, what I was feeling, before even making that decision. Before setting my mind to making that, I should tell and vocalize it to someone. So I vocalized it to a friend of mine who's working at Outfit 7 now, and she's a HR director or something, but she specializes in mental health and stuff like that, right? And I vocalized it to Paul, right? And we're talking about, like, at this point, I had done art tests and everything was fine. I had a friend of mine from from Outfit 7 that would just look at my art tests, the result, and he would tell me, this is not junior level, man. Maybe that's why they're not hiring you. You should be mid-level at least. Like, there was stuff I was doing in Unreal that no junior artist was doing. Like, I'm talking like procedural stuff, like from the ground up, like in the Material Editor. Like, I mean, this was before PCG, right? So, and so a lot of the stuff that you learn when you get into a studio, like that's what you learn, like the pipeline stuff, optimization. A lot of the stuff I was already taking into account because I was taught like that. And then I told Paul, and Paul jumped on a call with me. I remember that. And he told me that I was burning out. I should take a break from the project, forget about art tests, whatever, just take a break. And I took a break, and I actually felt a little better. And that's how I managed to actually finish the project, because otherwise I would have just given up. And then later I was still very much desperate, and I told Paul as well. And I told a lot of friends. I was desperate for feedback. I wasn't desperate like, hey, please hire me. Because I didn't want that as well. I wanted people to hire me because I was good, right? Not so. And people do hire you because you are good, and they don't hire you because you're friends. Like that doesn't happen. Well, not yet in this industry. Like the bottom line, if it does happen, your company will suffer, eventually bleed out money. Right. And you're starting to see that now, here and there. Like a few projects that have like the wrong creative vision, the wrong. Focus, let's say, and people don't buy the project. So that when they don't buy the project, then your investment goes out the window, right? So you're losing money, and if you're losing money, you have to shrink the team or shrink the infrastructure, shrink something. So Paul actually said, "Oh, I'll be in London. I don't remember exactly when this was, but there was a time when he was doing like studio visits, basically. He was training studios. So he was visiting like all the studios in the UK and in London, actually, not in UK. That would be crazy. But the VFX houses, like the major VFX houses in London. Yeah. And he was like, I'm going to be there because he's American. So it's like, oh, it's right next to Portugal. It's like, no, dude, that's not how we see it in Europe. In Europe, it's like Portugal and Spain. That's far away, even though they're literally touching each other, you know? Yeah. So, but he was like, oh, it's right there. It's London. It's just a 1 hour and a half flight or something. And he's right, actually. But and then I was like, oh, dude, but I'm so broke. You know what I mean? Like, I don't even think I can afford to go to London, even to meet him, because I never met him in person, you know, at this point, nor did I meet Ian or anyone else. And a friend of mine from Escape actually let me stay at his parents' house. So I stayed at his dad and mom's house for like a week just to meet Paul, and then I would just go and hang out with them in the evening, just to meet people from the major studios in London. Yeah. Just to get that networking going. And I mean, I had some networking, but to me, it was like, I don't think anyone has ever done for me what Paul has done, right? And in terms of like the will, right? As you can tell, like we have a saying in Portugal, which is like "Quanto é vontade," which means what counts is the will. What is your intent? The intent is what matters. Like, I don't think I had ever experienced that at the time, and so that kind of got me a little boost, you know, confidence. Yeah. And then I started doing a couple of freelance work in Unreal, and doing a lot of like environments and technical art a little bit. And this was like at around June. And oh, by the way, I met like the ZBrush Live people at the time, like the team that was dealing with that. And they got me on board for ZBrush Live. It was like nobody's doing environments in ZBrush, and that's sort of a unique, like doing I know there are people in the industry that are doing that, but nobody online is streaming that. Yeah. Nobody is online streaming that. That's not something. It's like most people that are starting out, what would you rather see? Like someone sculpting like freaking Vegeta from Dragon Ball, or sculpting like a freaking chair? You know what I mean? Right. To me, that's interesting. And there are some people that find that interesting. But for most beginners, it doesn't have the same
appeal as characters.
It's more flashy, let's say. Yeah. Right? But then if you look at the end result in the game itself, like the environment is what's telling the story. You could have a very simple character, but have like beautiful environments with amazing art direction, and you sell the game. Yeah, like that's the thing. Unless you're talking about like a hero shooter, which is all about the characters. You know what I mean? Right. So, but I was doing that, and then eventually at around the time that another art test went through, and they were kind of like, again, I'm not going to mention which studio this was, but they were kind of like not the best at replying, and they were actually one of my dream studios. And I had a friend that worked in a studio in the same town that knew a technical artist there, and showed him my portfolio, and he was the one that referred me. He was like, oh, hey, my friend just showed me the portfolio of this guy, and so they started, you know, with the art test and stuff, and they did a lot of stuff, and I was like, I called my friend that told me about that, that she showed the portfolio. And I was like, I'm going to give up. Like, I was at the ZBrush Summit at that point. And I was like, I'm at the ZBrush Summit. If I don't find, like, my inspiration here, I'm through. I don't care about the industry anymore. I'm going to do it for fun, probably, but not
as a professional.
Yeah, not as a professional. I don't care. So I was streaming. I mean, I could stream ZBrush Live. I could stream my own stuff, you know, like I had a whole branding, like, prepared and stuff like that. So... and this was the moment this is like freaking insane. It feels like I'm telling like this fantastical story. It's not. It's actually, it actually happened. Okay. So the moment I hang up on her, I went to this talk. I don't remember who was giving the talk at the time. And then someone called me midway through the talk, and I went outside, and it was from Germany, and it was to say that I got the job. Because I had applied for a trainer position in the middle of all the other 100 applications that I did, right? And so Maxon actually came through, and obviously, Paul knew me, so he actually vouched for me. He was like, no, this guy knows what he's talking about. And then obviously we did an interview. You can't do an interview with people that's actually illegal. You can't do that. So it has to be someone not partial, like impartial. And I did an interview, and then I did another with HR and whatever. And after that's when I got the call. And I remember that I took my first freelance check to buy the ticket to go to the ZBrush Summit. And I was like, this is an all-in move for me. I'm going to go to the ZBrush Summit to get inspiration. And I applied for the recruitment sessions. I remember I was talking to Yasmin. She's like one of the most famous recruiters from Blizzard. And I was talking to her, and I was like, I don't even want this job. I told her this, like in the recruitment session, I was like, I don't want this job. And she was like, why? And I'm like, because I just want your feedback. I just want you to let me know what can I do to improve, regardless of the job. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not that I don't want the job, it's that I don't care if I get the job or not.
Yeah, yeah.
And she was like, well, that's a way to start the interview. Like, I wasn't expecting that. Like, the moment I got there, I was like, hey, hello, I'm a technical artist, this, and that. Right. And I really don't want this job.
Right.
You know what I mean?
It's a good way to start.
Yeah. So I went to the recruitment sessions more like, I'm just going to get feedback, try to find my voice, try to reconnect with the fun again. And when I got the job in Maxon, I don't think it hit me until a couple of days later.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, I was still, I guess I got this job. I mean,
yeah.
I was like, yeah, sure, okay. And then I told Paul, and during the ZBrush Summit, it was kind of like dawning on me what I had just accepted. Because it was like Paul was like, handling some stuff, and we were helping. Me and a friend of mine were like helping packing and stuff. And there were a few things that he would say, like, oh, now you have to do this, or you're going to have to do that. And I was like, wow, that's so cool. Like it was someone else's job. You know what I mean? Like when you're like, oh, that's so cool. That job is so cool. And then I'm like, wait, but that's going to be my job. What the heck?
Look, I got to do that now.
What the heck is happening? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So that was very interesting. And so, I mean, leaving home for the first time since forever to not come back,
Yeah.
Not in the sense, like I go to Portugal every 3 months.
Moving to a new country.
To a new country, that was the most challenging thing. Because everything else is just, the people are wonderful at Maxon. I already made a few friends. It's wonderful. I mean, and I get to work with the people I worship, basically, which is, the ZBrush team. It's like, if there's a definition of the most awesome indie rock band team ever in the world, it's the ZBrush team. And I'm not biased at all, okay? I'm going to take off the hat. I'm going to take off the hat and remove my hoodie because it's also,
No, I could vouch for it. I got the chance to meet a lot of the people, and it really is. It's a special team, and it shows in the software. I mean, it's a software that's clearly made with a lot of love behind it, and and there's a reason why it has such a following, a community, and it's really the team behind it is really what makes it.
Yeah, for sure. It's a very special type of software. The fact that you can. It's not just about the artwork; it's about the way you work as well. This is something I tell at shows all the time. It's like. The difference between something like ZBrush and Maya, for example, is that you can customize the way your work is done.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say, like in Maya, your artistic vision or your expression is shown in the artwork, right?
Right.
Any other software is like that, actually. It's not just Maya. It's 3ds Max, Cinema 4D. Any software of anything, not even just 3D, the artwork itself is the way you vocalize your artistic expression, right?
Mm-hmm.
ZBrush, in my mind, and again, I am a very plural artist. I work in a lot of different software besides ZBrush and Cinema and Substance and all of that. So I'm talking a little bit like broadly. ZBrush is the only software on the planet that allows you to vocalize your artistic expression through the way you work. Not through the artwork, just like the way you can customize. Yeah, the way you can customize the UI is just the tip of the iceberg, which is one of the most customizable UIs ever.
And it's funny because like I've seen so many times on like people live streaming, and like a bunch of comments would be like, like what settings are you using? What's your UI? Like it's like everyone is like asking about that. It's like and it's cool to see different artists and just the color schemes they use and where they place things and what menus they choose to kind of like set hotkeys for. It's really cool.
When I was teaching ZBrush before I joined Maxon, I did teach a couple of times like ZBrush at one of the schools I used to teach full time, and then I went back as a freelancer to just teach a couple of courses, and I did teach them ZBrush, and one of the things that I taught them after like the basics, like how to get them sculpting, basically, was that every time they learn a new tool and try to apply it to something, create a menu for that. Create a menu, not just a tool, a workflow, because the workflow is usually comprised of a bunch of features, right?
Yeah.
And that's how I learned ZBrush with Paul. Like every time he was introducing a feature, I was making the menu while he was showing the feature. Because when you make the menu, you're making the order to which you use the features, and you can make duplicates. Like you can have a Dynamesh in one menu and on another menu at the same time. So I learned ZBrush like that, like how to combine features and stuff like that, and then you come up with your own, your own ways of working. And I think it's the only software that allows you to do that. It allows you not just to customize UI and create custom menus, because it can do that in practically any software, especially if you know a little bit of code, right? ZBrush, you don't need to know how to code.
Right.
But
ZBrush makes it easy.
Yeah, but like Unreal is also very customizable. Maybe not as much, obviously, but it's still very highly customizable. There are some software that are super customizable, but ZBrush is just on another level. You can literally change the color of every single thing. From the buttons, like every single button, you can change the color of when it's pressed on, when it's not pressed on, when it's on hold, like the Dynamesh where you click and you let go and it stays on. Like all of those things is just, I've seen UIs that look like freaking spaceship cockpits, man. And I've also seen UIs that have nothing, literally absolutely nothing, not even the bar on the top. Like I've seen, there's an artist that does characters like Steven Van Zeller. Like the guy doesn't use anything. It's like a clear canvas. And then all he does is custom menus. Like hotkeys. Hotkeys to pop in like custom menus on the screen. And that's it. And it's like, it's super minimalistic. It's sort of the way I work in a sense. Like I do a little bit of that, but sometimes I do get out of the, full screen thing. Yeah. But so that in itself is a testament, let's say, to how the software is tailored for artists. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
for sure.
Yeah. So
absolutely. So let me just ask, just to kind of wrap things up here. What's some advice you'd give to people who are starting out in the industry, looking to, kind of get their foot in the door, or maybe have their foot in the door, looking to start working and kind of just beginning their journey?
I was thinking about that while I was coming here, because I knew that question was coming. Because there are still, again, we've had this issue because before, what happened when I was starting out, for example, there weren't a lot of courses, which meant there were a lot of jobs for less people, which meant that people get paid more because there's less. It's
more highly specialized.
Supply and demand, man. Yeah. So there's the jobs that pay as much as they used to, like, are technical jobs, like technical art and stuff like that,
Yeah.
But to be honest, I don't think people should study something because it pays well. I never thought about that, because if that's the case, then why not go to law school? Right. Why not go to, medical school or something? It's just as hard, if not more harder. If a challenge is what you want, then sure. There you go.
Yeah.
Go to medical school or something. Yeah. And it pays like way more than anything in this industry. You know what I mean? So that is not the point, and it shouldn't be the point. And I think the problem is the fact that we are democratizing, let's say, access to this knowledge base is not bad. It's good, but it's a double-edged sword. It's a double-edged sword in the sense that you get more people, which means you can tap more potential, more talent. But at the same time means that the market gets saturated, the job market, right? So that means that there are a lot of people that are going to enroll in those courses that are not that passionate. They just need to take a course because their parents force them to, or because they need to do something and they don't know what they want as well, but the schools will take them because all they want is their money or whatever, or maybe just because they need the students to survive to actually have the course open. That could happen. So my if you're someone that is like super passionate about it, do it because you're super passionate about it, not because it's a job that pays better. Don't switch from being a character artist to like a technical artist just because it pays better. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. If you're a character artist, if that's what you really want to do, then you're a character artist. If you're not getting paid, you're still a character artist. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like, because people put their whole identity on their job and their whole identity on their salary, and that's not healthy. That's something I learned through burnout, you know? Yeah. That my job and my wallet, let's say, my bank account is not my identity, nor is my degree, nor is anything. Like you are you. Basically, right? And if you really enjoy, it's all about the thing about reconnecting with fun, right? Yeah. You have to enjoy and have fun while you're doing it, because if you don't, you're going to spend at least 8 hours a day, 5 days a week doing that for the rest of your life. You're going to be miserable in like 5 years. I can guarantee you that if you're not having fun with it, right? Yeah. So the main driver is actually have an internal conversation with yourself and figure out, is this really what you want? And if not, what is it that you want? Even within the industry, there's so many things, so many industries actually, so many jobs, so many roles, right? It's not just the games industry and VFX. I mean, ZBrush alone is like in 14 industries. It's crazy, right? So games and film is one of those, you know? So there's so many industries out there and so many job roles that I think it's more about like what you like, because you can also never predict how the industry is going to react to the economy, to politics, to whatever, right? So you can never really tell if that job that pays a lot now is even going to be around in a few years, or if it's going to be the same, or if it's going to pay the same. You know what I mean? Like you can't really tell that ahead of time, especially if you're starting to study.
Especially in today's day and age.
Exactly. So I remember still, and this wasn't like 2025, I'm talking like 2000s, like early 2000s, late 90s, when the first like computer engineering courses started to pop up in universities, because it was all like people were like, oh, this is what, you know, pays like people are getting well paid, because there wasn't a lot of like people that knew how to code and machine code, you know what I mean? Like assembly or whatever. Yeah. So even like being IT was like highly paid career at the time. So a lot of courses started happening. Everyone went to those courses. Everyone and their mom are enrolled in those courses. Right. What happened was 4 years later, 5 years later, that job, even though it pays well, is not as glamorous as it was before, because there was just so many people and not enough jobs. So obviously it's supply and demand. There's more supply than there is demand, which means that the supplies cost less. Supplies being the people who do the job. If there's more people than there are jobs, then the salaries go down. So, and that happened, right? And not only did that happen, it never really went away. There's still a lot more IT and programming jobs than there are people. I'm sorry, the other way around. There are more people than jobs, even though there are more jobs than ever. That's what I meant, right? Yeah. And so, but there are multiple industries, and you as a 3D artist, everyone who's as a 3D artist are privileged in that sense. Yeah. Like a programmer, right? If you know your shit, let's say, right? If you know your beep, you can beep that. Sorry. That's fine. So I'm pretty sure I must have cursed before in this whole interview, but whatever. So you can, if you know your thing, if you know your thing and you're really good at like coding, C++. Oh, geez. There we go. If you know your thing and you're really good at coding, C++, or even like anything else, like JavaScript, I don't know, Python, whatever, you can adapt to very different job roles in different industries. It's the same with 3D art. You can do characters, but you can do characters for games, but you can also do toys, you can do collectibles, you can do research, scientific visualization, you can do archaeology. There are studios, you'd be surprised. Like, wow, I've heard of that before. That's interesting. I trained studios that are doing like architectural reconstruction
Oh, interesting. That's pretty
old
cool.
old buildings and stuff, and they do scan data treatment in ZBrush. Not only that, but they actually sculpt and fix the data.
Yeah.
So there's so many avenues. Like if you're a technical artist, you could do actual scientific research and get paid 3 times more. You know what I mean? So it's just don't get too fixated on the career, the job role, and the money.
Yeah.
Be fixated on, I like to do this, and I enjoy playing with these tools, and I would do them regardless if I was getting paid or not. That's the key, and they will hire you because of that.
Right.
Especially high-end AAA studios will hire you if you're that type of person.
Yeah.
That would do it anyway, even if you weren't getting paid.
You're doing it for the love of the craft.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
very well said. That's a great answer.
Yeah.
So where can everybody find you online?
So I'm on ArtStation. Well, I'm on Maxon ZBrush as well now. So I'm also there. But I'm on ArtStation. I have LinkedIn. I have Instagram as well, and I'm gonna share it. I can share it with you.
Awesome.
ArtStation is obviously my portfolio, which has not been updated in a couple of years, but. And Instagram is usually, sometimes a little more personal, but other times I just post stuff related to the industry as well. And LinkedIn obviously is
it's
LinkedIn.
All just your name?
Yeah, Rodolfo Silva. If you look up Rodolfo Silva ZBrush, it might pop up something.
Perfect.
Actually, there's another Rodolfo Silva that does amazing toys and miniatures.
Oh, really?
So he's a ZBrush sculptor.
Funny.
That's super funny.
That's
when
really
I found out about that, and I was like, oh wow. People were like, oh, are you this guy? And I'm like, no, who's that guy? And I'm like, oh wow, there's
your alter ego.
Yeah, it's like a doppelganger or something.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you. This is awesome. I mean, I talk a lot, I know.
No, it was great. It was a really interesting story, and it really, I think, kind of puts things in perspective in a really great way. And so I appreciate you sharing.
Thank you. I hope it was useful to people watching this. So thank you so much, man.
Yeah.
It was awesome.